Chorus Voices, the podcast brought to you by Chorus, a fresh approach to community service. Settle in, listen in, and enjoy the voices who bring you reflections, musings, and stories from our community.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Chorus Voices. I'm CEO Dan Minchin.
And I'm Head of Brand and People, Lou Forster.
Now, Louise, this one is a little different. We're going to borrow a great conversation that you had with our friends at Human Synergistics.
Yes, so Dominic, Gourley and Sam Mead, who head up a podcast called Culture Bites, which is the Human Synergistics Australia and New Zealand podcast. They invited me on to have a chat with them about some of our culture journey. And very kindly said that we could play that interview and their podcast in full.
That's great. So let's have a listen now to Lou talking about culture at Chorus.
Welcome to Culture Bites, where we take culture theory and turn it into everyday insights. We're powered by Human Synergistics, and our mission is to change the world one organisation at a time. We can only do that together with our amazing community, so thank you for listening. Hey, Sam.
G'day, Dom.
So the Aged Care Royal Commission has kicked off recently, and we've seen the banking one completed. And so there's lots of stuff in the news about, I guess, everything that's wrong with companies and where culture has gone astray and so on. And that's what gets headlines, right? And I know even with our own PR team, they ask us to comment typically on where something horrible has happened. And I always try and ask them, like, what about, some of our clients are doing amazing things. Can we talk about that? Apparently it doesn't, the newspapers aren't as interested. But the good thing about having your own podcast is you can publish it yourself. So
Great.
So I guess, setting the scene. So, what's going on with the Aged Care Royal Commission?
Yeah, I think there's lots of good stories that probably don't get shared, but there are probably some stories that through this commission will emerge. And I think that's the reason why it was probably put in place. So it's making sure that there's effective levels of care within the community, and particularly in this instance in the aged care community. So I think it's a great opportunity to talk about with Louise about these opportunities of where things are going well.
Yeah, so you mentioned Louise there. So Louise is from Chorus, which is an organisation over in Perth. And so they've been working on culture for a while. So actually, I first met Louise. So she's the head of brand and people at Chorus. But I first met her when she came over here to accept a transformation award for culture as part of Care Options. And Care Options later merged with a couple of other companies to become Chorus. So they had achieved a predominantly constructive culture. And so what I want to do today is give Louise a call. And so instead of, we always focus on the, what's wrong and what's bad, ask her some questions about what are they doing, what's worked, what's going well. And maybe that way it gives other aged care organizations, but to be honest, any organization going through a culture change or culture development, some ideas of places to start.
Yeah, and I'm curious just to see what are the ingredients to that transformation. What are the things that they deem to be really important to what's helped them be successful?
Yeah, all right. So why don't we get Louise on the line and we'll patch her onto the studio. How's that sound?
Great.
All right, let's do it. Hi, Louise. Are you there?
I'm there.
Hi, Louise. This is Dominic and Sam from Human Synergistics. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Thanks for giving up your time to come on the Culture Bites podcast. I know as a fellow podcaster, you've got the Chorus Voices podcast over there. So the fun, the thrills, and sometimes the challenges with audio of recording a podcast.
Absolutely, yep. We've had all of them, I reckon, but it's good fun and it's a learning curve every time.
And I bring that up actually because I love, we want to get you on the line to talk about culture and what you guys are doing in the culture space. So you're in the aged care sector and so on, and there's a lot of news about that. So we just wanted to get a taste of, what you're doing and what's working for you. So maybe we can share it with other organizations. And I brought up the podcast because you guys have your own podcast called Chorus Voices. And the very first episode was about culture, the heartbeat of the organization. And I love that because it says something about how important it is to you.
It is. It's central to everything we do. And we're on, I think the next episode's number 33. But yeah, absolutely. One was on culture, and it really set the scene for us, I think. And a number of the episodes since have demonstrated how culture is just part of our DNA. I mean, it's everywhere, but we focus on, real kind of achievement culture and making it something we think about every day.
Yeah, I love that, building it in. And Louise, we actually met a few years ago because you were receiving a Culture Transformation Award and getting a predominantly constructive culture. And so what I'd love to hear from you is, what can you do in that space? What worked for you to build that culture? If you could share some tips with us, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Well, we've been on quite a journey. And when we met, it was after a transformation in a company called Care Options, which is one of 3 organisations that merged to form Chorus, which is the organisation as we have it today. So we're kind of on the second chapter of the journey because we had culture transformation over about 16 months, 2 measures of the OCI and OEI. And then bringing 3 organisations together after that, we pretty much started from a baseline, and we did our OCI and OEI in about mid-2018. So we'll probably look to do that at the end of this year, 2019, or the beginning of next year. So I feel like we kind of got a fabulous win, and then we've kind of, turned a page and started again a little bit. But a lot of the initiatives that we used at Care Options, we've brought forward in different ways, but we're using them here in the Chorus chapter too.
Louise, before you talked about, you look at culture every day in terms of you look at it, for some of the listeners, what are some of the practical tips you would have in terms of every day? How do you keep a lens on the culture, and what do you do to pay attention to it?
I hate to say that it starts at the top, but I think the role modelling and the setting of the culture kind of starts at the top. So our board and CEO and exec absolutely and wholeheartedly commit to constructive culture and our values at Chorus. And interestingly, we have a manifesto, which is a slightly left-wing statement on how we see the world at Chorus. So some of those kind of artifacts guide us all the time. And every time we have a conversation, make a decision, initiate an activity or a project, we always go back to our blue constructive culture. You'd be very proud of us. We're very blue here. We try to be as blue as we can, or channel that. And yet the values, we call them our RIPPER values, R''PER. So that's responsive, practical, empowering, and respectful. Mm-hmm. And we just keep it simple, I think. Focus on constructive values, manifesto. We've got what we call the Chorus Way, which is a nicer title for a code of conduct. Mm-hmm. And so we just have these reference points and artifacts, and everything comes back to that. So every recruitment process, every performance appraisal, every conversation about project always comes back to, one of those kind of baselines. So I think it's about having some artifacts that are, visible and tangible and mm-hmm. understandable, having a shared language, and just constantly referring to it. You just never, ever stop.
Mm.
How are you baking it into things like you talked about performance appraisals and stuff? How are you baking it into that, Louise?
So we're building bit by bit, using, the values or behaviours and LSI or the circumplex into job descriptions, so that, from the beginning, what's required of you in your role. And then our performance and development review process, which is quite a big kind of form, and there's some guidelines for leaders. We don't kind of mandate that every piece of it is filled out comprehensively, but this is just a whole range of things that you can use to talk to people. So we, have questions on values. We step them out a little bit more. This is what we think values look like. And then we have the opportunity for the individual and the leader to make a comment on that. And through our OCI and OEI last year, we identified achievement as our organisational objective. So we kind of go, what does achievement look like here? We're in our budget cycle at the moment, and that's about, for us, financial literacy for everyone mm-hmm. in the organisation, as opposed to rolling out the numbers as an example. So, I think it's just being very mindful, having some reference points, having some shared language. I think most people have an idea of what being blue or thinking blue is here. And that's really important, I think, to us. I think there's lots of models that have lots of value, but an organisation needs to choose one and then just work with that so that people understand what we're talking about.
And you mentioned you're in now the second phase of the transformation. Within the leadership team, what are some of the issues and opportunities that you are facing now as a team as you head into that second part of the transformation?
Well, we are pretty brave, and we try and be as blue as possible. And we actually yesterday had a 3-hour group coaching session with our consultants that work, with the human synergistics tools, but also with us quite closely. And so Ash Hunt did our coaching yesterday, and he pushed us hard, as he always does.
So Ash over at Verizon, yeah.
Yep. No stone is left unturned. Nothing is left unsaid.
Great.
So there are uncomfortable conversations. We rate our working relationships with each other out of 10 and what +1s look like. And we just go where other people probably don't go. And we try to not have our lens of our portfolio. So, I'm brand and people, so I try not to kind of protect my turf, but I think about what can our group add to the organization and what we're trying to do. What's our vision?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just constantly challenge ourselves, and we've all done our LSI too, and we talk about that and our styles that we kind of slip into, and we call it with each other, saying, I wonder if what you just said there may have been a bit, defensive. I'm not sure what your take is on that. We do the and rather than but. So yeah, that's an interesting idea. And I wonder how we're going to resource that. Let's have a conversation about it. So people kind of laugh when they hear us. And I'm not saying that we've got it all right, but we're trying really hard, and we're certainly open about it.
And do you think those honest conversations with each other is helping accelerate the transformation?
Oh, without doubt. I remember working with a CEO a few years back, and she said organizations, and particularly human service organizations like ours, are basically built out of conversations. The whole organization, it's people, is your offering to the world, and it's all conversations. And we look after people, and a lot of that is, verbal, I guess, or social interaction, as well as some physical support. But we are pretty much made up of conversations here at Chorus. So yeah, it underlies everything. Relationships are underneath performance. If you haven't got good relationships, you're not going to have good performance. Just without doubt, it's non-negotiable here.
I love that. And so, Louise, you've touched on it starts at the top. You've got to set the tone and some of the conversations and approaches that you have as a leadership team. How do you get the rest of the organization involved? How do they own part of the plan?
So I think our COGS, culture optimization groups, are I don't know what you call it, just the magic. We did have those at Care Options, and I think we got up to 5. And now we're on just starting COG number 4 at Chorus this week. And I was in COG number 3. So that's our 12-week, roughly 12 people meeting every week for 2 hours to work on an initiative that will work on the culture at Chorus. And they just work. They're cross-functional, hierarchical. Take your role hat off at the door. Everyone has a voice. We all learn a lot of the human synergistics tools while we're there, kind of subtly. Most people have a transformation in that 12 weeks, and we have a project that usually involves going out to the organisation and talking to them about something, whatever what we're working on. We worked on reward and recognition in the first COG, safety in the second, and we kind of continued safety in the third. So somehow those COG members will go out and engage with the organisation. And then each time you have 12 people who literally have been through a transformation and will share that. And we talk about that, left, right and centre across the organisation. There's, visual signifiers, and we have our newsletter and videos and all sorts of things. There are other initiatives, but I think the COG really is the kind of flagship of trying to get that real grassroots movement and for that transformation, because we can't change things from the top. We can absolutely role model and set the scene and make sure that we're working hard on culture and investing in it, but we do need people across the organisation to get what we're trying to do and buy into it too.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that because it's, as you said, it's hats off at the door, so everyone's kind of on an even playing field, which is probably a bit unique for people, not necessarily what they expect and so on. And it sounds almost like, to borrow a Silicon Valley term, it's like a sprint or something, isn't it? Like a development sprint. It's kind of a culture sprint or something.
Well, we do a bit of design thinking as well. So I've never put the two together, but I think you're right. They're very similar, actually. And the hat at the door, I think intuitively, we have been doing things like that already. And I love when you see an artifact and you think, oh, that's because the culture is a certain way. So our name badges were one of the first Chorus things that were produced, before we got uniforms and buildings and cars and all those sorts of things that you see around. So these name badges were hot off the press, and they have people's first names on them. That's it. So my name badge says Louise, Dan Minchin, our CEO, his says Dan, and there's a Chorus logo, and they're black, which we think is pretty cool. But to me, that speaks volumes about our culture, because everyone is a person and everyone is completely respected and valued for who they are, not for the role that they have or the title or position or anything like that. And it's quite interesting when you have conversations and people say, so who are you? And you're like, I'm Louise. And they're kind of expecting a bit more, but I usually wait a bit to explain and just get to know a person as me and as them.
I love that. And I remember actually on that note, when you came over to collect the Culture Award while you're at Care Options, the CEO came, you came, that makes sense. But actually the whole team came, right? I think it was the COG team at that time.
Yeah, some of the COG teams, a couple of support workers, someone that was working in a corporate department as an officer. So, more of a transactional role, but, very much a part of the COG and very valued. I think, and Sasha came over from Verizon. There was about 6 of us and it was fabulous. And I think I did a bit of a recording that may have made it to a podcast. I can't remember, talking to the ladies about coming over, what that meant to them. And they just said it meant the world, like to be valued enough to be taken to Sydney to come and collect award because they were a part of the transformation was just, that was just everything to me.
Speaks volumes.
The COG sounds just like a great initiative in terms of putting the effort behind the cultural change and, as you said, focusing on one initiative at a time, personal development, business challenge. When you link the culture to the strategy, how important is it to have initiatives or practical resource applying the culture change from your experience, Louise?
I just don't think we would get the results that we have without it. And organically, we've ended up working on strategic issues in the COG. So they kind of benefit, there's a double whammy there. I think probably because we tend to go to COG and say, hey, these are the things that we're grappling with. We never dictate, this is what we want you to do, but we say, these are the most important issues. And usually that group will say, well, we want to work on the most important issues. So there's always, usually has been that strategic alignment. And I guess I often use the example of a bullying policy. You can have a policy that says, we don't accept or tolerate bullying here, but that won't eradicate bullying. So unless you build it into the fabric of an organization, it doesn't matter what you have written down. So it doesn't really matter what's written on your strategy unless it's built into the everyday fabric. You're not going to deliver on that strategy. So I guess that's probably how we look at it. So yeah, there's good alignment, and we use a tool called Trello to map our sprints on our initiatives. We're using this design thinking, and there's a COG sprint in there. So I don't know why I haven't ever thought of the two as so aligned. Yeah, I think, and because everything is just so intrinsically part of everything we do, I think, when we're talking about strategy, culture is just part of that. It's just everything we approach is from a cultural perspective. We're not going to get the change or the outcome we desire unless we think about what cultural journey might we need to go on there. Change is inherently cultural, and a successful merger is going to be culture, or unsuccessful mergers are very often as a result of culture clashes and failures. So I think we're, perhaps because of the merger, really aware of that.
Thank you. The people listening to the podcast will be familiar with the tools or may not be, but what advice would you have for people listening in around just that topic? If you're at the start of a transformation or at the start of a cultural evolution, what would be some of the first steps? What would be the advice you would give people, partners, heads of HR and businesses? What advice would you give about starting that cultural evolution?
Well, Cotter's change steps are a good starting point. You probably need to create a compelling case to work on this. You need to probably create that burning platform. You're going to need to get buy-in. You're going to need some resources. They may be people, but you are going to need some financial resources as well. We have invested significantly in culture, and that can be hard at the beginning because you need to get that buy-in. And then I think, as I said before, just, pick a direction or a model or an approach and just keep on going with it, because it's a journey and it takes time to see results. So flitting around, 3 months in, this isn't working, you're not giving enough time. I would definitely say you need a year to 2 years to start to see that change. So, getting the buy-in from the people you need to have buy-in from for a journey that needs investment and time. And then I tend to look at things organisationally, team level and individual, and those together. So what are you trying to do organisationally? How are you going to work with your teams, intra and inter? And what's your goal with individuals? It's a kind of interweaved for us, and you're constantly looking at those all together. And, you have a plan, but be ready to change it. I think that's everything at Chorus. You kind of know where you're going, set off, but be ready to adapt. Yeah, I think they're my, main bits of advice, and celebrate those wins when you get them. So when because you will have people that aren't, they're skeptical or not completely on board. So selling those wins when you have them will get the momentum going. Things like for us, the results of COG and testimonials and people's transformations, you have to, celebrate those. And then slowly people kind of go, some of this is a bit mad, but we're in, it's working. So let's keep going.
That's
Love
great.
It. Hey, and Louise, so you mentioned getting the CEO and management and stuff on board, and you said at the very start of our call that the CEO and the board and the executive team in general were right behind culture. So what was it for them? What was the thing that really got their energy behind it?
I think, without calling out individuals, people would probably say they came along at different points. For me, leading, the work or being responsible for us doing this work, Dan's commitment, the CEO's commitment, has just been second to none. So has stood behind this from the beginning. And that meant that everybody else kind of at least stood to see, okay, well, let's just see what happens. And then because we're able to demonstrate that it's successful, people got on board. We also have a couple of people on our board, our chair even, who's familiar with human synergistics tools. So that was really helpful. And we put in for some funding to support us in the initial stages. I think, again, because culture and mergers are so linked, that helped our focus in the beginning. But I would say that people have been on different journeys, and some people have said to me, I'm not on board with this, but, it looks like we're doing it, so I'm going to give it a go. And who knows what they would be on a circumflex.
But they came around.
Most people have come around, and the people that haven't, that's okay too, because it's a very unique organisation, Chorus. I mean, we have regular 3-way coaching. Most people, I'll say some people, will find that confronting, and they don't really want to choose that, and that's okay. And they might not choose Chorus eventually. So I think we have become so sure in who we are and how we do culture around here that people either opt in and stay in or opt out, and that's fine, because everyone's journey's got to work for them. So yeah, I'd say that people have come along on the journey at different times, and if they haven't, then they have chosen another route, and that's fine.
I love that, Louise. I think that's all the time we have of yours today, because I know you got to rush off to another meeting. But thank you so much for sharing that with us. I love the practical tips that people can take away and put into action. And, this is how you start moving the dial on culture.
Thanks, Dom, and thanks, Sam, too. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Louise. Have a great day.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Cool. So what do you reckon, Sam? What did you pick up from that?
That was just great to listen to Louise, and I really liked some of the super practical ways to bring culture to life and how important it was in their business. And the COG, the Culture Operating Group, I think is just a great idea for anyone looking to really get fair income about their culture in their organisation.
What I love about the COG thing is it's a rotating group. I think that the danger of having like a culture team or something in organisations is everyone's looking for them to do everything. What I like about COG is it's a sprint. Like we talked about, it's 12 weeks. They're solving a particular problem. It's made up from people from all across the business, and then it rotates. So it's not stuck on one group of people who have to come up with everything. It's actually spreading it across the organisation.
Yeah, building that advocacy, that change agency, which is so important. And the other thing I liked about it is they got personal development in themselves. It was, I grow, I also contribute to a business problem, and I help with the cultural evolution of this organisation, which I think is just a fantastic practical initiative to help bring it to life.
Super motivating. And the other bit I loved that Louise talked about was how they bake it into everything they do. And the companies I've seen who are the most successful with culture are the ones who embed it into just how they operate. So it's not just a project or a thing on its own. It's just in the DNA. It's how we do stuff in this company. And that was evident even down to the name tags. And I've actually got a funny story in that. I met with a company a while ago were looking at doing some culture work, didn't follow through. But what was interesting is it was like the head of HR and the people and culture person who reported to it, something like that. And they handed us their business cards, and one had kind of yellow font, and the other had like gold embossed font, right? The manager had the gold font, and the other one had just yellow. Speaks volumes, right?
It sure does. And I love that the leader was setting the tone from the top. I think Louise said that she, hated to say it, but I think it's a really important point. It's a super key part of any transformation, whether it be culturally or business, is that leader's got to be fully committed and set the tone and lead from the front. And I think that's, again, another part of their success story.
Yeah, I love it. If you're a keen podcast listener, which I suppose you are, go check out their podcast too. So it's called Chorus Voices, and the very first episode that they released is called, I think it's Culture, the Heartbeat of the Organization. And so you can hear it from them. It's Louise and the CEO, Dan, talking about it. So it's pretty interesting. And just as an artifact in itself, they do that podcast a lot it's an internal thing as much as it is an external thing. And they get on people from all across the business to do like day in the life of. So what's it like to do your job and stuff? And, that says something too, right? They're inviting on all these different people to share their stories. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
So, I really enjoyed it. I love hearing from people and what they're doing and having great results. All right, Sam.
Thanks, Dom.
Thanks for your time.
Cheers.
Till next time. Thanks for listening to this episode of Culture Bites. If you enjoy the show, remember to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, leave us a review. It helps other people to find the show. If you have a question you'd like us to answer, email podcast@human-synergistics.com.au. We'd love to answer it. This podcast is copyright by Human Synergistics Australia, all rights reserved. To learn more about what we do, visit human-synergistics.com.au.
Thanks for listening to Chorus Voices, the podcast brought to you by Chorus. If you like our show and wanted to know more, check out our website at chorus.org.au. And please leave a review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and it helps others find us and enjoy the podcast as well. Join us next time for more inspiring stories and news from our community. Chorus, a fresh approach to community service.